Also, if you're new, whether you're being with us or not, it'll be fun if you on your chat write down, where you're from, because we do have people from all over the country. So it would be great if you do that. Okay. All right. So we are with not only with the Neogen Nutrition, but also we have a Neogen Clinic, which is a longevity clinic, and we help patients reverse the chronic disease utilizing the most natural means possible. If we have to utilize, a traditional medicine, we do it also, but we make every attempt to reverse their disease through the natural means. And also help people achieve, the most optimal health. So a little background about the autoimmune disease, and if you have the disease, if you've done a lot of research, it may be a little, elementary, but I want to bring everyone to the same page. So autoimmune disease is basically it's a condition in which your immune system is basically mistakenly attacking your own body, right? Immune system is to fight off the foreign, antigens, foreign viruses and bacteria, but it starts to attack our own body. And so again, normally the immune system can tell the difference between the foreign cells, such as the bacteria and viruses, from our own cells. But in autoimmune disease, again, the immune system, mistakes the part of our body, whether it's a joint, skin, or different organs, and it released the protein called antibodies that attacks our own healthy cells. Okay? And there are over 100 different types of autoimmune disease, and depending on which organs or joints and skins are attacked, whether it is in thyroid, so thyroiditis, or Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. If it's in a musculoskeletal system, it may be rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and it could be in the GI tract with the Crohn's disease, or also the colitis. And now we have a much better understanding of all the different autoimmune disease. And in the past, we used to think they're all different disease, but what we're finding out is it's essentially the same disease manifested differently depending on the genetic makeup or the different type of environmental factors. And if you look at this graph, looking at the incidence of lupus before 1950s, it hardly ever existed. But over the past 56 years, the incidence has been rising pretty rapidly, along with the other autoimmune disease, whether it's a type 1 diabetes, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, or asthma, is rising rapidly. And as you can see also in the graph on the right, the incidence and prevalence of the obesity also has been rising at the same time. So there is, obviously something that's going on with our community and our civilization. And nearly 8% of the Americans have at least one autoimmune disease. That's a pretty tremendous number. That's, as T stated earlier, that's over 25 million Americans. And there's 250,000 new cases are diagnosed each year. And every year, the prevalence are increasing. And women are more susceptible to autoimmune disease than men, and they think hormone has something to do with it. And that's 80% of patients, autoimmune disease patients, are women, and women are 2.7 times more likely to develop the autoimmune disease than men. Okay? And 97% of the autoimmune patients have one or more of the following conditions. I mean, this is a big list, but it probably makes up only about 20% of the autoimmune disease. But and many of them have more than one. They start out with developing one autoimmune disease. However, as time goes along, and there are many that develop, 2 or 3 additional on top of the main autoimmune disease that they experience. Okay? And let me tell you about Denise, rheumatoid arthritis, which great number of people suffer from, and she too had a pretty severe rheumatoid arthritis for about 3 years. Had difficulty walking, dressing, performing everyday tasks. And she's been through so many different kinds of medications, from all the different kinds of immunosuppressants. And her last medication was Humira, which you probably seen on the TV commercial. I mean, it's on like every other TV commercial. It costs $25,000 to $50,000 a year in order to get the Humira. And it treats just about all different kinds of autoimmune disease. But if you hear in the TV commercial all the potential complications, those are real. And she started having a lot of different complications, not just her hair falling out, not being able to remember her kid's name, losing memories, but also she was developing serious heart complications. She was developing heart failure. And so she finally decided, okay, well, the traditional medicine alone wasn't working, which, her physicians really did not advise her anything outside of traditional medicine and medications, and told her that she'd be on medication basically rest of her life. So she starts searching on her own, and found us. We've been doing free seminar for many years, just educating the public. Because once I discovered that I have the ability to prevent cancer or other chronic disease, and something that I did not learn in medical school during residency or fellowship, I was actually quite upset. And I decided that we need to share this information to the public, and so then you can take control of your own health. So she attended one of our seminars in December 2017, and she started following our protocol. And she gave all in 100%, and following the whole food plant-based nutrition, changing her lifestyle, and with proper supplementation. And within 2 months, just 2 months, she showed that her rheumatoid arthritis was in remission, and she was all in 100%. And her symptoms improved significantly, and she was feeling amazing. And in 4 months, she went back to the doctor. Her rheumatoid factors were all negative. Ron is a very similar story. He is very athletic, is a serial entrepreneur, very intelligent guy, but suffer from chronic disease. But within just 4 months, it doesn't. Everyone has a different time frame, but if you give it all you got and go in at 100%, then that time can be shortened. And he, for the first time in his life, was feeling a lot more energy, and he was able to really reduce the symptoms he was experiencing from the Crohn's disease. And he said, I don't have any more symptoms from Crohn's disease. I feel so much better with my strength and recovery. So this is possible for just about everyone, and not everyone can reverse the disease 100%, but they can make it significantly better. And not everyone may be able to get off the medications, but many of them can reduce the amount they're taking. And then overall, most important thing is feeling better and then getting really healthy. And so what causes autoimmune disease? There are 5 main root causes. There's some genetic component of it. There's some environmental triggers, lifestyle, influences, diet and nutrition, and then also one of the most important things is gut health. Okay? But genetics, a lot of people like to blame everything on genetics. I was born with it. It's in my genes. I have no control. And it's an easy way to basically say, hey, I don't want to do anything about it, right? Because I have no control of it. But that's not the case at all. And so even the genetics may predispose certain people to the autoimmune disease. The less than 10% of those with the gene progress to clinical disease. Okay, so what that means is that depending on the environmental triggers, lifestyle, diet, and gut health, you may be able to prevent developing autoimmune disease. And if you do develop it, you may be able to also reverse it. Okay, so again, environmental factors play a significant role in development of the autoimmune disease. And also, we all know that the stress can definitely also trigger an episode and make things worse. And so that's why the lifestyle also becomes very important, and learning how to manage the stress as well. So it's not just one thing. There's no one magic bullet, magic pill. and it's very multifactorial. And if you incorporate all of those things, then you may be able to not only prevent, but also be able to reverse it. And also, a lot of people don't necessarily think the allergies and asthma as strong association with autoimmune disease, but it really does, because allergy, asthma, autoimmunity all result from dysregulation of the immune system. And I see allergy as very early signs of the autoimmune disease. I myself, before I went whole food plant-based, I suffer from severe seasonal allergies. I was coughing nonstop for about 8 weeks during my residency, and I was on total of about 3 or 4 different medications. And then instantaneously, all the symptoms stopped, but also at the same time, I was on multiple medications. And no one ever told me that I could change all that by, through nutrition and lifestyle modification. And not once had my internist ever discussed that with me. And later on, as I was doing the research, and that's what I figured out. And within a week, for me, seasonal allergy was basically gone once I, stopped all the dairy products and animal-based products. So, and the immune and inflammatory cells that are involved are very, very similar. Whether it's asthma, allergies, or autoimmune disease, they all involve the similar type of immune cells. And one of the most important triggering factor is the diet, and especially the standard American diet. And this is what the Americans really, enjoy in the Western diet. And what's the interesting thing is that I've been doing lectures to some of the countries in Africa, which used to be the healthiest continent, but even in Africa now, adapting more processed food and westernized food and American food, they're developing the same problem that we have in America. So we're importing our chronic disease, we're importing our obesity, we're exporting the diabetes and even autoimmune disease as well. Okay, and this is what the American diet is made up of: 54% the processed food, 32% from the animal-based products, only 11% from fruits and vegetables, and 4% from whole grains. But what do you think is the #1 consumed vegetable in this country, and #2 most consumed vegetable in this country? I think many of you may be surprised that it is actually the ketchup, which is the #1 consumed vegetable in this country, and French fries is close #2. And I was actually shocked by this stat that ketchup is even considered a vegetable. That the standard American diet then also leads to the obesity. 80% of the Americans are overweight, obese, or extremely obese. And then with obesity comes diabetes, cardiovascular disease, but also the autoimmune disease as well. Okay? They all play, they're interconnected. And as I mentioned, also cancer, diabetes. And many of you may know that if you do have autoimmune disease, you also increase risk of developing cancer as well. And so along with that, with the lifestyle and especially the diet, and one may develop chronic inflammation, which is also considered the silent killer that I always talk about. And one of the, with the chronic inflammation, you significantly increase the risk of developing autoimmune disease as well. So before you even start thinking about healing, I always say that you must stop injuring yourself, because every single day you are causing damage to your body. And so let's say if you cut yourself and you have to allow it to heal, but if you keep on banging on it, scratching on the wound, it would never heal, right? So before you heal, you have to stop injuring yourself. And you do that by preventing the inflammation and preventing the factors that causes inflammation. And #1 cause is the diet, and in eliminating the inflammatory food. And so without it, no matter what you do, and people just want the medication and then have all the bad habits. And so that's why they could never heal. They have to be on medication rest of their life. And so the most common inflammatory food that's consumed by the Americans in Western diet is dairy, meat, refined sugar, fried food, oil, gluten, and processed food. Okay, and with this, every single day for breakfast, they're creating inflammation. Then the snack and lunch, they're creating inflammation. Dinner, inflammation. They're inflamed basically 24/7. So then, what do you expect your body to do, right? And if you put a diesel gas in an unleaded car, what do you expect it to do, right? It's just going to break down. So with that, these inflammatory food causes something called leaky gut. Okay, what that means is it creates permeability. So your lining of your gut is supposed to be really, really tight, and they even have a structure called tight junction. Okay, and it's supposed to allow only digested food and nutrients and certain chemicals to enter into our bloodstream. But when they get loose, then it's going to allow partially digested food and protein, bacterials, antigens, and endotoxin, all the things that you don't necessarily want entering into our bloodstream. And even the lab animal studies showed high dietary fat also shown to injure the intestine lining, increase the permeability, and then more of the foreign antigens were entering into the bloodstream. Okay. And there are other things that causes the leaky gut and then causes inflammation in your gut. And number one, also alcohol, right? And if you drink, it's just once in a while, may not be a big deal, but there's some people who drink every single day in significant amounts. And then alcohol, which is an antiseptic, so it also kills the microbiome, right? Your bacteria. Not only the bad, but also the healthy bacteria, and directly cause damage to the inner lining of our gut. Okay? And so, and antibiotics. And so many people, whenever they get sick, they go to the doctor, and then the first thing they do is they ask for antibiotics, even if it's a common cold. And each episode of course of antibiotics, it wipes out about 1/3 of your gut microbiome. And it takes a while for you to recreate the diversity and the population of the healthy microbiome in your gut. And so sometimes we do need antibiotics, but unless you really need it, you need to stay away from it as much as possible. Okay, and then also, especially patients with the arthritis related autoimmune disease or joint aches, they're taking NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and in long run, initially acutely it may decrease inflammation. However, in long run, it actually increases inflammation even further. Also, they directly cause damage to the lining of the gut as well. And then also, if you do not have healthy microbiome, then you have a pathogenic bacteria that also causes the damage to the inner lining. And then that may lead to the leaky gut as well. So when you do have a leaky gut, then you got the substance, the proteins and different antigens that enters into your body. And then those, they may have amino acid structure that closely resembles our own amino acid from different parts of our body. And then our immune system creates an antibody against the foreign antigen that actually goes into your bloodstream. Okay, and that may be whether it's an endotoxin, it may be bacteria, it may be partially digested food. Okay, then antibody is created, and if it has if our own body has a similar amino acid structure, it doesn't have to be exact. Then those antibodies are going to start attacking our own tissues and our own organs, and that's how the autoimmune disease starts to happen. Okay, and then let me go in a little bit more specific about each of the things that the type of food that causes the inflammation. Okay, so a lot of people can't seem to get away from dairy. They say they're addicted to dairy, and one of the main reasons is because dairy has a protein that's casein, and then which byproduct becomes a case of morphine, and it acts like an opioid. And that's why people are literally addicted to dairy product, and people don't realize how unhealthy it is. First, it's unnatural because you're supposed to be drinking milk when you're an infant, right? And then after infancy, you're done, right? And you should be moving on to adult food. And but in the Western society, that even you're an adult, you're drinking milk that's not natural, and especially it's not natural when and it's not coming from your own mother, right? It's coming from cow or other animals, and those the casein, the protein that comes from the dairy, it causes not only inflammation, but it can actually turn on the cancer genes through epigenetics, and significantly increase the risk of prostate cancer for men, ovarian cancer, and breast cancer. Okay? And then also there are so many studies that have shown that the kids who develop a juvenile diabetes or type 1 diabetes, early on, they transition, very early to a dairy product from, rather than from mother's milk, and then transitioning directly into dairy milk. And so that has a strong association with autoimmune disease. So, I tell, moms and dads, please do not serve your kids dairy products, because it may increase, potential complication with type 1 diabetes. And once you have a type 1 diabetes, your life is completely changed the rest of your life, right? And unlike the other autoimmune disease, you can't reverse type 1 diabetes once your beta cells are gone. And so, in a way, without knowing, they obviously don't do it intentionally, but they are actually causing their children to actually develop type 1 diabetes or juvenile diabetes. And so, which is really, really sad. And many physicians don't know this either, but there are so many studies that support that theory. And so, and also there's a strong association with increasing autism and then losing bone density. A lot of people think that you got to drink milk to have a strong bone. That's all marketing, right? And all the studies have shown that the countries that drink most amount of milk has the highest amount of osteoporotic hip fracture. So it's something that we definitely want to avoid. And also meat, right? And then especially the processed meat. Processed meat is considered the group 1 carcinogen by World Health Organization. And then the rest of the meat is considered the group 2A carcinogen. So what does that mean? Things like bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and salamis is group 1 carcinogen, which means it will cause cancer. Okay? It will cause cancer. Not maybe cause cancer, it will cause cancer. And so it breaks my heart, like, if we happen to go out to eat and then for breakfast and I see little kids, just really enjoying bacon. And again, not realizing that is a potential complication. Same class as plutonium and asbestos and cigarette. They're all group 1 carcinogen. And rest of the meat is considered the group 2A, which means probably will cause cancer. So those are the things from that stand that we definitely want to avoid, but also all these meat also increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, because the fat that comes from the meat also creates fat inside the cells, and that causes insulin resistance. And we call that intracellular lipids. But also it increases the risk of developing leaky gut through the disruption of the gut. And then also the study have shown that saturated fat and trans fat, which is in the animal products, it increases the inflammation and increase the activities of the immune system as well. Also, the all meat products significantly increase development of something called arachidonic acid, and which is extremely inflammatory, and then takes you to an enzyme pathway that creates a lot more inflammation and create joint soreness or stiffness, or even other chronic disease, including autoimmune disease. Same thing with the omega-6 fatty acid. It also increased the production of amino acids. So this is a very a busy slide, but the main point of this slide is to show you that the there's two different types of essential fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6, and they share the enzymes. And with those enzymes, they go through this chain. The omega-3 is considered and helps you develop more anti-inflammatory properties, while the omega-6 becomes much more pro-inflammatory and develop pro-inflammatory agents. And so we want the ratio to be 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 of omega-3 to omega-6. But most of the meat products and oil have a significantly higher, like 1 to 30 ratio. And so what that means is that you're more likely to develop agents that will cause much more inflammation. So again, omega-6 will create inflammation, while omega-3 tends to be more anti-inflammatory. And that's why we also, in order to prevent injury ourselves, we also ask our patients to discontinue utilizing any kind of oil, all the vegetable oil. And many people believe, it's surprisingly, like they think that coconut oil is supposed to be healthy. And it really is not. It's significantly high in saturated fat. But not just the oil, but most of the processed food. And most people don't realize that there's so many processed food that contains oil. And if you look at read the ingredients, it's really difficult to buy anything that comes in a box or package that doesn't have oil in it. And in fact, like we were in Costco this past weekend, and we were looking at dried blueberries, right? And then even then, it also had oil in it also. And most Americans consume about a pound of oil every week. Because some people say, oh, I don't use that much oil. But based on USDA's stats, that average American consume about a pound of oil every single week. That's a pretty tremendous number. And with that, they go down the path of the omega-6 and significantly increase the agents, such as arachidonic acid, and then going into that enzymatic pathway that produces the agents that causes the inflammation. Okay, so is healing autoimmune disease naturally, is that possible? Yes, absolutely. Once you stop injuring yourself, then you can start adding things to start the healing process. And in the way we approach with our patients, okay, and we go through a pretty intense reverse program, and you can do it, like all in 100%, and in a very intense program for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Or you can do it gradually, but obviously you're going to get the best result if you go all in. And the first 6 weeks, we put all our patients in pretty much a raw diet, raw vegetables and raw fruit, okay? And a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, tremendous amount of, like a pound of green leafy vegetables a day, and along with the cruciferous vegetables. And sometimes it's difficult. Your jaw gets really sore from chewing all that vegetable. So I make it into a smoothie. And we've had smoothie recipes. We even had it on our website, but we have one specific for people who are trying to reverse autoimmune disease, or the one that also trying to reverse and help treat the cancer. And we ask people to drink about, anywhere from 50 to 70 ounces of a smoothie each day, because otherwise it is not easy. I try to do it myself, but it's not easy eating that much raw vegetables in a day. And also, you can have lots of different kinds of fruits. However, just so you know that the fruits themselves don't have as much nutrients. And they have a lot of antioxidants. However, they do lack some minerals. I mean, that's why we like the vegetables, right? Vegetables are growing out of the ground, and unlike the fruits. And so we focus heavily on vegetables, but you certainly can have fruits. And also really minimizing the cooked vegetables. If somebody really, really need it, they can have some, but obviously with cooking, they do lose some nutrients. And so especially first 4 to 6 weeks, we try to stay raw as much as possible. You know, we had not just even in the, you know, with the autoimmune disease, we had a patient who've had severe purulent acne for over 10 years. And the dermatologist, only thing they did was prescribe, you know, antibiotics. And with that, they've been basically just killing all their microbiome and wasn't getting any better. And it only took her 3 weeks on our you know, raw vegetable protocol and the whole food plant-based for the first time in, you know, like 10 years. She stopped having acne. So, and then after that, we strongly encourage people to have still a lot of vegetables. 75% of their plate should be vegetables. Okay, and then the raw vegetables, it not only comes with a lot of vitamins, nutrients, and minerals, but also it comes with the natural microbiome, and it's rich in the bacilli, and then also chlorophyll. And the study have shown that it really helps with the symptoms, especially also with the rheumatoid arthritis patients. Also, we focus on omega-3, short-chain fatty acids. As I talked about before, omega-3 leads you to anti-inflammatory pathway, unlike omega-6, which leads you down to the pro-inflammatory pathway. And so, you know, we use a lot of chia seeds, but we don't want you getting the grounded chia seeds or grounded flax seeds. We want you to get the whole ones, because once you ground them or mill them, it gets oxidized, so it's really not as effective. So we want, each time we want you to actually, you know, grind it right before you utilize them. So that's why we put them in the smoothie. And if you do, you know, high speed, high power blender like, you know, Blendtec or Vitamix and into your smoothie, I mean, it makes them grind them up and mill them so well that then you can't even tell the difference. So that's how we would definitely recommend it. And it's a great source of the ALA, which your body naturally converts it into the EPA and DHA, which is the essential fatty acids. And there's so many benefits of the omega-3. It's essential because we need it and our body can't make it itself. But also, you know, it integrates into our cell membrane, allows it to be very, very flexible, allows the nutrients to get in easily, and then also the toxins to come out. And if you lack the omega-3, you will have a difficulty getting the nutrients into your cells, and then detoxing the toxins out of your cell also. Okay. And there's also many different, obviously, benefits. Even it helps building a very healthy neurons. And then also studies have shown that the moms who consume a lot of omega-3 while they're pregnant have children who have higher IQ. So that's certainly additional benefit. Also helps with the memory and cognitive function and the mood as well. And another study showed that if you're deficient of omega-3, it's associated with the depression as well. And also it's it helps with the brain function. And so I make sure that you know, I add about half a cup of either flax seeds or chia seeds, or you know, sometimes I also use hemp seeds in my smoothies as well. And so it helps protect against dementia, Alzheimer's, and really helps with the brain function, and also boosting the immune system as well. And this is one of the most important thing, hydration. And for some reason, for all the different chronic disease, a lot of people don't think about hydration. And if you're dehydrated, you're going to get a heart attack, right? And one of the biggest, you know, risk factors for cardiovascular disease is dehydration. And same thing with the autoimmune disease. And you've got to hydrate yourself so that you can naturally detox all the different toxins. And, you know, if you read, most people, even doctors say, you know, 8 cups a day is plenty. That's the recommended dose. But you know, if you're healthy, that might be, and if you're not really active, that might be, but that's just not enough in order to heal. Also, if you're active, then you need significantly more. And what I typically recommend is a gallon a day. You know, I'll show you. This is, I have a gallon water bottle, and I fill them up full every morning, and then it's almost gone. And so I got to make sure I have them the whole gallon each day. And if you do make a large amount of smoothie, that also counts as well. So, and so along with the water, so I'll probably drink a lot more than a gallon of water each day. Okay, and also if you're dehydrated, you know, that's the #1 reason for headache. That's the #1 reason for, you know, a constipation, right? And then you can also see if somebody's dehydrated, their skin looks like it's aging much faster. And so those are the skin is what you can see, right? And so your organs are aging inside as well. And you got to definitely keep yourself well hydrated. Okay. So basically to reverse the autoimmune disease, we try to make it as simple as possible so that it's a very doable thing. And so #1, you know, drinking lots of water, you know, at least a gallon a day. And so you do, not only it helps with the autoimmune disease, it's great for your cardiovascular system. Also, it even helps you lose weight. Okay, and then also first 4 to 6 weeks in the intense program, really focusing on raw vegetables. And if you don't want to go in all in, just make sure that at least 75% of what you eat each day is raw, and also a large amount. And then at least for every meal, you should have a large salad. And I didn't have a chance to post it, but you know, right before our webinar, I just made myself a extremely large salad. And so I'm going to share what I ate for dinner tonight on the social media if you happen to follow me. And so, but also on top of that, it is difficult. And then also, especially if you have you know, autoimmune disease, you may have difficult time really you know, absorbing the nutrients. And if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber and also vegetables, it may be difficult to absorb the nutrients. And that's why we like utilizing the smoothies. And then, you know, some people, some lifestyle physicians always say, well, your teeth and your mouth should be the blender. Well, you know, that's much easier said than done, and takes a lot of time to eat that much vegetables. And that's why we strongly recommend making a smoothie. And then when I say smoothie, it's not just, you know, a few pieces of greens, and then after that sweet fruits. Majority of it, the entire blender really needs to be dark green leafy vegetables. So what I typically do is I freeze my, you know, power greens that I get from, you know, the Costco, and then after that, then I fill them up in my blender, and then I push it down all the way down, and it becomes about 50–60%. Then I fill them up even more. I pack it down even further. Then I put it, you know, I use both flax seeds, chia seed, and I also actually add hemp seeds also, and usually about combined about a half a cup or so. And then after that, then I add a cup of blueberries, and then any other fruits that you may enjoy. And then once you're used to that, then you know, we can certainly add additional antioxidants. I typically add, like, you know, green tea, matcha green teas, and then amla, turmeric, ginger, and there's about 18 to 20 different ingredients that I add to my smoothies. But in the beginning, I want everyone to just do it, you know, have a simple approach. The most important thing is the dark green leafy vegetables, the flax seeds or chia seeds, and blueberries. Okay. And then also adding on other antioxidants to your diet. And then also then you can slowly introduce, once you start getting used to having that much fiber, then you can start adding on the legumes, you know, whole grains, because those have to be cooked, right? And then other starchy vegetables. And then also, if you like, you can, you know, steam some vegetables. And then adding additional cereals and fruits, and then, you know, higher fat plant foods. like nuts and seeds, other nuts and seeds, and avocados and things like that. So, and also I strongly recommend people practicing intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. That's not only good for weight management, but also it's great for gut health. Your gut just needs to rest. And there's some people who eat just basically 24/7, right? But your gut needs to rest, but also your gut microbiome also has a circadian rhythm. When it's dark outside, when it's at night, it needs to rest. You need to stop feeding it. And so I recommend not eating typically after 6 p.m. or at latest by 7 p.m. and not eating for about 14 hours. And you're going to be asleep 7 to 8 hours a night anyhow, which is also very, very important for maintaining circadian rhythm, not only for yourself, but also for your microbiome as well. And then also, if you're really motivated, then the occasional water fasting for about 4 or 5 days. You can't really do any longer than that without medical supervision. But doing water fasting is also great for reversing a lot of the chronic disease, whether it's autoimmune disease or hypertension and many other diseases. Okay, and then also as I mentioned the sleep. You need to sleep like a baby. Great for your immune system, and also obviously great for the autoimmune disease as well. And exercising on a regular basis, and then really focusing on also how to restore the gut microbiome, which is the center of optimizing your health. And 80% of your immune system lies within your gut. So we need to do everything we can to restore our gut health. Okay, and this part I've gone through it last week, but in case you weren't with us, I'll go through this a little bit faster. Okay, so what is a gut microbiome? It's basically a microorganism that lives within our digestive tract. It's not just the bacteria, but it's also fungi, viruses, and protozoas. And it can be both friendly and unfriendly. Obviously, we want more of the friendly version. And then within our gut, we have this intestinal villi, it's like finger-like structure, so that it can increase the surface area, so that we can absorb all the nutrients that we need. And then if the microscopic view here, the arrows are showing this soapy circular structure, and these are called goblet cells. And when they're healthy, the lining of the gut, they produce a mucus that protects, that coats the lining and protects us, and especially from all the different kinds of microorganisms, as well as partially digested food, and then other endotoxins. And so it functions like a fence or the wall between our own cells, which are the blue, and all these fluorescent structures are the microbes. And our microbes are very similar to the soil bacteria. But animals, because they eat off the ground, they naturally get the soil bacteria, and then many of them have a very healthy gut. But we don't eat like that anymore, right? So we really have to make great effort to restore our gut health and restoring the healthy microbiome. And we have typically about 100 trillion microbiomes in humans. That's and 90% of them is in a large intestine. And the bacteria to human cell ratio is about 10 to 1. And there are over 10,000 species of bacteria in our body. As far as the genes are concerned, humans only have about 23,000 genes, but we carry about 3 to 8 million genes of gut microbiome. And microbiomes play a significant role in metabolism, immune system, as well as central nervous system, as well as also the cardiovascular system as well. And they not only help us digest food, but also produce short chain fatty acid, which is critical for our health, metabolizing drugs, neutralizing different kinds of toxins that we ingest, maintaining healthy gut lining. And then also they have the ability to turn on or off the genes. That's why even you may carry a certain type of gene that disposes you to developing certain type of chronic disease, doesn't mean you will develop them, because diet and lifestyle, along with the gut microbiome, you have the ability to turn on or off the gene, including the cancer genes, and that's called epigenetics. Okay? And so if you do have altered gut microbiome, it can obviously impair the immune function, and not only is increasing the risk of developing infection, but also increased risk of developing allergies, asthma, and autoimmune disease. And then it increases the inflammation that affects not only in your gut, but also other organs throughout our body as well. And so can we change our microbiome, and how does the microbiome influence our health? So this is a very unique study where they were able to, in a lab, generate mice without any germs whatsoever. And then they transplanted half the mice from a mice that actually was skinny. And then the other set from an obese mice. They transplanted the microbiome. And then they fed them exactly the same amount of calories, same level of activities, but the mice that had the microbiome transplantation from the skinny mice stayed skinny. However, the one that actually had the transplant from obese mice became obese. So it's not just about the calories, it's not just about the level of activities, it's also about the gut microbiome. And there's actually article, a case study that was written about a mother who had a C. difficile infection. It's a chronic diarrhea, and all the healthy microbiomes have been replaced with the C. difficile, and then it's a pretty serious condition. And then now they're doing a fecal transplantation, and then and she used to be skinny and lean, and then she had her daughter donated her feces, and then they were able to do the transplantation. And about a year later, when she came back for a follow-up, her condition was great, and she no longer had C. difficile, and diarrheas were gone. However, she gained significant amount of weight, and she said she's eating the same and eating less and constantly dieting and exercising. However, she can't seem to lose any weight. And then they couldn't figure out why this was the case until they met the daughter again, and then her daughter was obese. And so they believed that it was the daughter's microbiome that caused the mother to actually gain significant amount of weight. And this microbiome, generation of the microbiome starts from when we're born, right? And then when we're in mother's womb, we are completely free of microbiome, but as soon as we're born, we get exposed to the microbiome, either mom's vaginal or rectal microbiomes, versus if you have a C-section, then you're going to get first exposure is going to be the hospital microbiome. So there's a significant difference with kids who are born with through a C-section versus a vaginal birth. The one with the C-section tends to have increased prevalence of allergies, asthma, autoimmune disease, and obesity as well. Okay, and so not just the way you are born, but also whether you're breastfed or not can also predetermine type of disease that you may develop, because the breast milk also has prebiotics, which are the food for microbiome. And the fiber itself, humans don't have the ability to digest the fiber, and it's really for the bacteria, and especially the oligosaccharides that's in the breast milk, and that is specifically for the microbiome. And in order to grow healthy gut bacteria, that the babies have to have a breast milk. Okay, so how do we develop healthy gut microbiome? It's the fiber. Okay, and people think that our ancestors were hunters and gatherers, and they ate mostly meat, which is not the case. They weren't fast enough. They didn't have the weapon. They couldn't chase after the animals. Mostly they were gatherers and hunters, and women are the ones who actually gathered the food, and then men came home empty-handed most of the time. Okay, and so if you look at the fossils of the feces, they average approximately about 100 grams of fiber per day, and modern Americans consume only actually about 15 grams of fiber per day. Significant difference, right? We don't necessarily, as I mentioned before, have the ability to digest the fiber. And we only, humans carry only about 17 genes that can degrade the fiber. However, we carry microbes, microbiomes that has about 100,000 genes to actually degrade the fiber. And then they produce many different type of molecules. It looks like a chart from organic chemistry. And many scientists are studying how these chemicals are actually affecting our health. So, but if you starve the microbiome, and this is what can happen. So this is a slide of a fiber-rich diet. And then again, the blue structure is our own cells, and then green is the mucus layer. Yellow structure is the fiber, and then fluorescent structures are the microbiomes. But if you deplete the fiber diet and then starve the microbiome, then this is what can happen. Okay? And then they start eating into the mucosal layer, and then they become closer and closer to our own cells. Okay? And then that eventually leads to, because we lost that protective barrier, that they start to injure the tight junction, and then our inner lining becomes much more permeable, and then which develops into a leaky gut. And then when you do, then a lot more of the foreign antigens, endotoxins, partially digested food can enter into our bloodstream. Then our immune system again recognize it as a foreign substance and develops an antibody against it. But if there is the amino acid mimicry, so we have the similar type of amino acid structure, then our own immune system recognizes us as a foreign body and start attacking it, which is again how we develop the autoimmune disease. Okay, and so there are other ways we are damaging our microbiome also. So is when we're, because of the sanitation reason, our water is chlorinated. And so it's not only killing the bad bacteria, but it's also good bacteria. And then a lot of people drinking, soft drinks, which has a phosphoric acid, which also kills the bacteria. And then a lot of food being exposed to, pesticides. Again, I mentioned alcohol, and then even the dishwasher detergents, right? And so, some recommendation is, washing your dishes with the hot water, unless you really need to, I guess the food is stuck to it and you really need to clean the dish, try to use without washing the dishes without using the soap. And then also toothpaste and mouthwash, depending on what they have. Antiseptic mouthwash definitely kills the both good and bad bacteria. And then also in your mouth, it also kills the bacteria that helps you convert the nitrates from the dark green leafy vegetables that produce the nitric oxide. And so not just for your gut microbiome, but it also affects your cardiovascular system. So definitely, even the dentists these days recommend against using antiseptic mouthwash. And then also overutilization of antibiotics can definitely negatively affect the microbiome, as well as sugar. And then also most people staying inside, not being exposed to the outside. And this study showed that the kids who live in the rural area tend to have lower risk of developing irritable bowel disease or inflammatory bowel disease than the kids who live in the city, because they're exposed to, let's say, whether it's farm animals and then the wilderness, and then a lot more diverse microbiome. So they tend to have significantly less incidence of developing inflammatory bowel disease. Okay? And also multiple studies showed that direct correlation between the improvement of the symptoms from the inflammatory bowel disease with the amount of fibrous plant food that you consume. And I was really surprised that some of the doctors, whether they're family practitioner or even some of the gastroenterologists, are telling the patients with inflammatory bowel disease to avoid fiber. which, it may help them very temporarily, but in long term, it's actually creating more damage to them. Again, to show you that, as a physician, we really didn't have any education on nutrition or how to help heal people through natural means. And so also eliminating gluten for if you're gluten sensitive or if you have celiac disease, and also refined sugar definitely improves the symptoms. And then also a plant-based diet, having a lot more fiber, a lot more fruits and vegetables, significantly improve their symptoms. Okay, and so we want to focus our diet after we've gone through the intense reversal program, continuing with the anti-inflammatory bowel disease diet, which is a whole food plant-based nutrition. There may be a little bit of modification that you may need to make, but overall, they're fruits and vegetables, legumes, and starchy vegetables, and then the non-starchy vegetables, and nuts and seeds, and whole grains. Okay. And then there's just lots of green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and also herbs and spices, and of course flaxseed. Okay, and there's other things besides the diet itself that you can do to help promote healthy microbiome. I always recommend getting a dog. If you do, please get a rescue dog. They go outside and they bring the soil bacteria back to us, and then you naturally share the bacteria, and you get exposed to those healthy bacteria. And also feed your microbiome, which means eat plenty of fiber and avoid unnecessary antibiotics. And then also don't over sanitize. This is a difficult topic right now because everyone's so scared of the coronavirus, and we need to wash our hands often as you can, especially if you're exposed to others. However, I think people are over sanitizing themselves and using too much antiseptic, alcohols and things like that, which also kills the good bacteria. And then also eat bacteria, which means eat fermented food that has a lot of good probiotics. And then get your hands dirty, go garden, get exposed to the soil bacteria, and spend more time outside. Okay. And then also, when you do eat a plant-based, eat a wide variety of food, and then consume at least 30 different kinds of plants each week, because they all naturally have different microbiomes within them. And so you get exposed to a very diverse microbiomes. Okay. And then mention the fermented food, right? And then really, again, I can't say this enough, avoid processed food. If it comes in a package, you really need to have a second thought about it. Okay? And avoiding sugar, artificial sweeteners, which have shown to damage the healthy microbiome. And then also avoid food high in fat and processed meat and meat. Okay? And we all know that it significantly increased the inflammation. And these are the fermented food, whether it is sauerkraut, kimchi, pickle, and miso, and tempeh. Okay? And then also, some people don't know this, but it's very important also to supplement with vitamin D. 70% of the U.S. population are insufficient of vitamin D, and then 30% are deficient of vitamin D. And some stats says it's up to even 42%. And vitamin D is very, very important regulator for your immune system. And then also for your gut health as well. And most people spend their time inside, and even you spend some time outside, depending on where you live, you may not get the UV ray in the right angle, and you're just not going to be able to activate the natural vitamin D. So I would recommend supplementing. Okay, and so the key to the healthy and resilient microbiome is eating food that's high in prebiotics. All it means is just eating food that has a lot of fiber. So people always ask me, how do you get your protein, right? And I say, well, how do you get your fiber? So, and then also the lifestyle is very, very important for maintaining healthy gut, and then also helping you reverse the autoimmune disease, managing your stress. I recommend meditating, even 10 minutes of meditating per day. No matter how busy you are, you can always find that 10 minutes for yourself. And studies have shown at UT Southwestern with Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize, that you can actually change the gene expression, and then also the amount of telomere that you develop at the ends of your genes. And so telomere is a marker for aging. And exercising on a regular basis, spending more time outside, and then sleeping, critical. And most people are, most Americans are constipated and sleep deprived, right? And then it's not just for yourself, but it's also for your microbiome. And then also really considering intermittent fasting, which is very important for your gut health as well. And if you're really motivated several times a year, you may consider 5 days of water fasting, okay? So to achieve the optimal health, it says, you have to live a pair lifestyle, which means eat more plants, exercise on a regular basis, avoid toxins, and restore, okay? Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And then also, if you have something to add, this is we're trying to develop a community. It's not just for me to talk, but I've learned from some of the participants. I don't know everything. I just want to share the knowledge that I have, but I'd love to learn from everyone. And so if you have something to share, please do so. And then also, if you're interested, follow us on News and Nutrition. It's their social media sites. And then also my social media sites for all the social media is at Dr. One MD. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Awesome. Dr. One, thank you very much. It was very informative. Go ahead, and I'm going to try to go in order as much as possible, and you can continue to use the chat function to type in your questions. And I'm just going to call on each person. So if you don't mind, when I call on you, please turn your microphone on, and if it's not on, and video if you would like, and ask the question so everybody can hear it. And then Dr. Wan will give his best answer. So I'm going to start with Michelle MacArthur. Michelle, you had a few questions, and so I'm going to let you go ahead and get to those, and you can go ahead and just kind of ask them in a row. You don't have to wait.
Thank you so much. I will. Thank you, Dr. Wan. This was so beneficial. I actually am totally in the health and wellness from my own journey. I kind of just put that in there. I'm diagnosed with a double autoimmune, one of the dermatomyositis. I'm glad to see that that is actually a popular word today. Back in 1989 with one of the erythematosus systematic lupus. After 14 years of pharmaceuticals, 100 milligrams of prednisone, basically death was at my doorstep, but it put me down a cocktail of pharmaceuticals like you were mentioning. For the past 20 plus years, I've been in alternative, drug-free, herbal medicines, Chinese medicines, and changed my master's from organizational behavior to Chinese medicine and learning tongue and pulse diagnostics. So some of this has been very, very educational. Questions that I have is, one, I would just love to know if you offer some certifications, because this was by far everything that I usually speak, but some of the things where you mentioned all raw. When you say all raw, isn't raw a little bit more mucus forming that we need to wilt the like lettuce with a piece of hot olive oil or something? Because that's what I was taught and told through my journey.
Yeah, for us, we especially early phase, we completely avoid all forms of oil, including olive oil. Because olive oil, even at best, the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is 1 to 14. So it's certainly better than the other vegetable oil. However, it still can be inflammatory. So during that time, we do try to avoid utilizing any forms of oil. And then also, because most people are doing a smoothie regimen, we really haven't had issues with, mucus formation.
Okay. Okay. Well, and because I'm hearing you say more, I've always gone through 25% lean meat, 75% green leafy vegetables is what to keep the spleen happy. The spleen is your immune system. It's your allergies. It's everything. And the drinks and everything are definitely one. So that was, if it's a lean piece of meat or fish or whatever, that can wilt the vegetables. Do you think, do you agree with that, or you're more on just plant-based vegetarian?
Yeah, I would have to really disagree. Everything has to be, like at least evidence-based. Not everything can be studied. However, there really is no study that shows that, having a lean meat actually it decreases inflammation. And in fact, any kind of meat have shown to raise the CRP and increase inflammation. I know not everyone can become 100% whole food plant-based, so you have to make a decision. And I tell people that if you tried everything else and didn't work for you, then what's downside of trying it for at least 6 weeks, right? And then see how you feel, and then you can make a decision for yourself. And after that, and some people do go back maybe eating a little bit of meat, but then I tell you, a lot of people come back and say, oh, you know what? My symptoms came back, and so they've gone back, right? And so and it's very difficult. What I found is people to do something called moderation, and the way they define moderation is however amounts they really eat. And most people tend to overeat the things they should not be eating, and so overall, in general, most people just can't do that. So I think if you really want to heal, it's different. If you want to prevent, and also, if you're a healthy individual and maintain that in the health, it becomes a different. If you want to really reverse the disease, and what we have found is that, we ask people to go 100% whole food plant-based. And ultimately, it's a decision they would have to make for themselves. We don't force anybody to do anything, but cut out any kind of meat products. And that's why it has to be whole food plant-based. I don't like to use the word vegan because there's a lot of unhealthy vegans, and processed food is vegan also. And
Exactly.
So I want to make a clear distinction. It's a whole food plant-based, and so no eggs. Because eggs themselves has a lot of choline, which causes the production of trimethylamine that gets oxidized in your liver and becomes extremely inflammatory, and then increase your risk of developing cardiovascular disease. And a lot of the research was done at Cleveland Clinic. And then also, of course, dairy. And so vegetarians consume dairy, and that is one of the worst things that you could do for your health, but also I think especially for autoimmune disease. And if you look at the let's say Indian population in India, right? And they're mostly vegetarians, but why do they have so much cardiovascular disease? Why do they have so much autoimmune disease and all the chronic disease just as much as US? Is because they use a lot of dairy products and they use a lot of oil, right? And that's part of the reason why they have such a problem. And so it is pretty amazing to see how fast some people can really change their course. As the example that I gave, like Denise, like when she came back, 2 months later, like when she says, like her symptoms were gone, I said, what are you talking about? And then, we also have he wasn't even my patient, but it was my patient's husband who had multiple sclerosis. And then I was giving this, talk to the speech to his wife, who was my patient, and he listened. 8 months later, he came in. He was on a wheelchair and walked into the clinic with a cane. And he said, "Well, we both did it." And then, and he was able to reverse multiple sclerosis. And so, I say if you have disease, at least for us, I strongly recommend in utilizing our approach because that's from the research that we have done, and that which seem to work extremely well for the patients.
Okay, thank you. One of the last questions, and I'm just flabbergasted at the information. Thank you. And we have patients at the clinic as far as that are all autoimmune. There's specialties, but this is a definitely great comparison. Crazy water, non-GMO, no MSG. I mean, you said processed, so that's pretty much all of the same. And right now, where the foods are so toxin, aside from growing it yourself, that right there, you kind of answered that question. But how do you feel about the crazy water from, I don't know if you're in Texas, from mineral wells?
Yeah, I live in Dallas, and
Okay.
we do recommend filter water. I think you can go so many different directions with different types of water, but again, it's my recommendation is based on the research that's available, and so I think that for people, and also trying to make it as simple as possible and be effective. I think people should do a filter water, but as long as it's filtered, they looked at all the different kinds, even the filter that you have in your refrigerator versus the Brita versus all those. As long as you maintain them well, they all perform pretty much the same. And like, I think one of the lifestyle medicine physicians said he thought when the Brita says you got to change your filter every 3 months, it was just a marketing. But the actually study came back and said if you don't, and there's overgrowth of bacteria, and so you do need to change it every 3 months, and it becomes a lot more effective. And so it wasn't just a company trying to sell the filter. And so, but I do recommend filtering the water. But as long as you do that, I think
water.
Yeah.
But what about the crazy water as far as, have you had any good luck with it, like the bicarbonate? I mean, obviously you can use organic bicarbonate that goes through, but some of the healing because of the natural, that's, they sell it in all the stores around too. But some of them are alkaline, some say alkaline, some say this, some of the crazy water, or do you think like a combination of everything?
Yeah, they actually did a study on all those alkalized water, and they found that majority of them were not alkalized. And then when they did, the study, well, your stomach is so acidic, and you want your stomach to be acidic as possible. And when they drink it, it becomes acidic. And so we recommend actually not wasting money on alkalized water because there's no commercial water they have actually tested. They tested about 20 different brands, and none of them, not a single one of them, were actually alkalized. And so I wouldn't trust the alkalized water. And then also most of them comes in a plastic bottle. I think that's actually worse because you don't know exactly where they've been. Could be sitting in a hot warehouse for hours, and then you're drinking plastic toxins. And so I think but I don't have other experience from the different types of water. I think the number one thing is people just hydrating themselves. I think that's the most important thing. And so, but if you have other experiences, I'd love to, and other studies, love to learn from that. And if you're willing to share.
Yes. Well, the crazy water's from mineral wells, and it's natural from the minerals. But yeah, I'll put my contact information in there, and I definitely would. I'll turn back over to the floor and not take. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Michelle, really appreciate you. Next, we're going to go with Angie. Angie, you had a couple questions related to your sister, and then Maria will be getting to you after Angie.
Angie, maybe.
Yeah, I know Angie was here. She might have just stepped away for a second. I see her she's still logged in. So Maria, why don't we go ahead with you next, and then we'll come back to Angie after. Oh, Angie, you're back? Okay. We'll let Angie go, and then we'll come back. Angie, if you'll just unmute your microphone, please.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you, Dr. Wan, for your presentation. Yes, I'm representing my sister. Like I indicated on the chat, she was diagnosed with SLE in 1995 after experiencing joint pains. She had a major flare in 2008, has had intermittently major flares, specifically in the tummy, and also around her hands, and mainly skin flare. She's been put on a high dose of steroids. She was put on a high dose of steroids and antibiotics for to clear the infection in the tummy and in the hands, and it was administered intravenously, sort of under control, but she still has the skin flare, which affects her hands. She can't hold things. She is on 5 milligrams of prednisolone and 400 milligrams of hydroxychloroquine. What I wanted to find out is, do those affect her? Do they have a side effect on her? She is on a high fiber diet, a plant-based, intermittently with white meat here and there, but otherwise her diet is, as you have said, doctor. How can she prevent the bed flares because her hands are not functional? That
Yeah,
is my
so I
question.
guess really depends. With that, she can develop. I think. Did you say she's got the Sjogren's?
Sorry?
What type of autoimmune disease does she have?
SLE, they said.
I'm sorry?
SLE.
Oh, SLE. Okay. Yeah, and so it depends on how severe it might be, and then what other things she's doing, and so obviously she's taking steroid to decrease her inflammation, but in long run it will actually cause more inflammation and causes more damage to her own body. And so, we don't really like somebody having a steroid a long term, even if it's low dose, 5 milligrams, in traditional medicine considered low dose, but long term, it can have a pretty significant negative effect. And so she needs to do everything possible to get off of those. And she needs to probably see other healthcare providers who can help through her that process, because just relying on her, traditional rheumatologists probably are not going to be able to improve her symptoms or reverse the disease if they just keep up with the same medications. And if it's not getting any better, but then they tend to add more medicine rather than really trying to see what they can do to help reverse it. And so, my advice is seek other, healthcare provider who can actually help her through natural means. That, without really seeing her X-ray and seeing her, condition, it's difficult for me to state what else she needs to do. And then when also some people say they're on, plant-based nutrition, but also that term is loosely utilized. Just because you don't eat, like mostly animal-based products doesn't, mean you're really plant-based. And then also there's a lot of things that people think it's not processed. It is processed. So really need to dive into, her, what she eats for every single meal. And then, is she willing to do a very intense reverse program? And so one has to really decide. This is what I tell people. People come to me and say, I have this, and that, and I have so much pain. So what can I do? And I tell them what needs to be done. They say, oh my goodness, that's too much. And so I don't want to do it. I say, well, it's only for 4 to 5 weeks, and just to see how you feel. And then after that, you can make a decision. Oh, no, I'd rather have a surgery, or I'd rather have my chest cracked open and I have the veins stripped from my leg and then put it in my heart. Even the studies have shown that it does not prolong your life. And so But that's why I say it's a choice. So, you know, I don't know exactly the condition she's in. She needs to think, okay, what am I going to do? Do I really want to make a change in my life? And if so, then she can't be doing the same thing she's been doing. And then I think first thing she needs to do is seek other help.
Okay. All right. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
I think I'll send more detail on the contact details that you sent.
Sure. Be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And then Maria, you're up next. You had a couple of questions.
I did. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wan. Always, you know, at the end of your presentations, it's just so inspiring and timely. And I need to stop hurting myself, you know, at the end of the fork. That piece of food has information. And I realize that my diet has been just bad. So I'm at 54, Hashimoto's. Now my joints in the morning, every morning, they're very stiff. They're painful. Is it possible, Dr. Wan, is it possible that this gland can learn how to function after 12 years of giving medication every day? How can you awake my body to do what it was doing before? Because you talk about reversal, that's something I'm kind of stuck on. How can this gland learn to work again?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely, number one, you're creating a very better environment for your thyroid. And patients with the Hashimoto thyroiditis can get, significantly better. Some people have reversed it, and some people may not reverse it completely. They may still need some medicine, but they're able to either reduce the dose or they feel significantly better. But also, another important thing is that you may have one, let's say, autoimmune disease, Hashimoto thyroiditis, but studies have shown that after one, if you don't do much about it, it's very likely that the one with the one autoimmune disease will develop second, third, fourth, and then fifth, and continue to develop other autoimmune disease. Essentially, it's spreading to different organ systems, right? And so that's what you want to prevent. And so it's not so much the thyroiditis that causes the stiffness and joint pain, and you could be developing, additional inflammation, and hopefully you won't be developing rheumatoid arthritis or other form of inflammatory arthritis. And those are the things that you also want to prevent. And those are the things that you're able to really reverse. Even patients with the rheumatoid arthritis, like I mentioned Denise, she was able to reverse it. But also, if you have gone so far, like I've shown a picture of a lady with the typical the hand gesture because their joints are so damaged, and once it's gone too damaged, then it's really difficult to reverse it. It's also, in some of them, you're not able to reverse it. However, you're going to make their conditions better, their symptoms better, and so it's never too late, and you got to do it as soon as possible, because most people tend to wait until already the damage is done. And then depending on what the condition might be, you may not be able to fully reverse it. And so, but, the things that you're doing, like I think you said, taking turmeric and ginger, those are, herbs and spices that provides a lot of antioxidants and great for joints, and then for your, gastrointestinal, GI system. And so those are great things. But there's if you have the disease, there's a lot more that you can do. And then after it becomes a routine, like I don't even think about it. And then and you stop missing things that you used to eat. And I see where you see food becomes different also. I see food as first as a fuel. How is it going to fuel my body? And then also, is this going to heal my body, or is this going to damage the body? And then even the food that are healthy, certain foods are actually healthier than the other. And then you can only eat so much in a day. And so eating certain type of food becomes almost an opportunity cost, because you can't eat something that's even healthier. And so so the way you think about the food may also change also. So, you know, you may not be able to, you know, going back to your thyroiditis, completely reverse it. However, you're going to create the right environment where your thyroid can begin to heal.
Okay. Well, I have a positive ANA from labs. I'm going to start doing labs again, but I'm interested in taking your protocol. I hope it's affordable. You know, I tried calling to some integrative functional providers, and their packages are so in the thousands of dollars, and there's got to be a better way. So I'm hoping your protocol will be accessible for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly they're in the produce section at your local grocery store.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Wan. Thank you. I'll turn it back.
Okay.
Great. And Maria, was that all that you had? Okay, great. John, I know you had a couple questions, or maybe one question in relation to grains.
Yes. I thought I heard something about eating grains raw. Can you eat grains raw? If yes or no, which grains should you cook, like wheat or rice, but you can eat like rolled oats, buckwheat can be eaten raw. Which can be raw and not?
Oh yeah. I think you may have misheard. I said that the grains, it cannot be raw. Most of them cannot be raw, and so therefore they're phased in after our initial raw program, and then after that, then you know, we do want you to add the whole grains, and then of course, you know, if you have celiac disease or if you're, you know, gluten sensitive, then you definitely want to avoid anything that has gluten. And then also, if you have like the irritable, you know, bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease, then you may also, you know, even though you're not, you know, don't have celiac, you may want to avoid gluten also. But other than that, then you know, we would definitely recommend whole grains. And also the among the plant food that has most amount of fiber is the legumes like beans and lentils, and then after that are the whole grains, right? And so vegetables is very important, but they themselves, you know, don't have as much fiber as the legumes and the whole grains.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure, pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Up next, we've got Tracy. Tracy, you had a couple of questions.
Hi, yes, thank you, Dr. Wan.
Hello.
I, like Maria, also where I have the Hashimoto's, but I also have a Lynch syndrome, or the gene, but I don't really focus on that. But the Hashimoto's seems to be out of control, which now I understand is more of just all the damage I've been doing to myself. But the damage, let me preface by saying I was plant-based for years. I kind of let the junk sneak back in, and then that's when I ended up getting sick with other things, and the Hashimoto's kind of came to a surface. So I understand there is a connection there. I felt it myself. But my question would be, is there, like, how do we find out about this intense reversal? Because also like Maria, I've tried different doctors, the recent and very expensive, I'll try something. You're told, try this, don't do that, eat this, don't do that. Lately, I went to a naturopath here in Dallas, and she was like, oh no, like you have to do paleo and no legumes and don't eat any nightshades and tomatoes will kill you. And then I mentioned about being plant-based, and she's like, well, that's what got you to this point anyways, is you did this to yourself. So it's like you almost, I don't know if Maria feels this way, but you want to throw your arms up because you're like, where do I go? Although my gut, no pun intended, does really feel like I want to do the plant-based because that's what I know worked for me before. But I guess I just need a starting point because there's too much information and everyone contradicts the other one. Not saying you're doing it, because obviously I'm here.
So yeah, definitely reach out to us, and then we'll get you plenty of information. And then and, you know, in our intense program, it really depends on you, and it's very affordable, and it's not going to be like some of, a crazy amount like some of the other programs. But also a lot of the other doctors, if they're recommending, like, we base our things based on the scientific studies. Unless study's been done, it's basically, we call it a bro science from YouTube channels, right? And then even NIH did a study for the paleo and then keto, paid for by the paleo society, and at the end it was no difference whatsoever. They don't have any long-term studies whatsoever. And so a lot of the even some of the healthcare providers tend to go along with what's popular because that's easier for their patients. But there's one commonality why certain patients do get better, okay? Whether it's a paleo, whether it's a keto, whether it is, whatever diet, is that if they do it properly, first thing they do is commonality is cutting out all the processed foods. So they do get certain, the improvement, right? But beyond that, it's a very limitation because, you need antioxidants. There's no antioxidants in the animal-based products. Studies have shown it's not just about one thing. You got to think about the whole picture, right? And then is that going to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease? Because no matter what, chances are most people do die from the cardiovascular disease than any other, the chronic disease. And then is that going to increase your potential risk of cancer? And if you have autoimmune disease, that's something that is real, because having autoimmune disease studies have shown that increase your risk of developing some form of cancer, and your risk is higher than somebody who don't have autoimmune disease, right? And so those are all the factors that you have to think about. And then how does and you want to decrease inflammation, but you're eating food that causes inflammation. And that's clearly, there's, plenty of evidence and scientific studies that shows that. And so, and that's why it is so difficult. I actually have a slide that shows every single diet, and people go to the internet or people go to their doctor, naturopath, chiropractors, and they get, so many different answers. And it is difficult to sort things through. And that's part of the reason why, 4 or 5 years ago, we started with the free seminars just to provide people with information. And back then we didn't offer any programs except for monthly seminars. And through that, then we start seeing people coming back and saying, oh my God, this happened to me, that happened to me. And then also we start, incorporating those protocols to our patients, not only surgical patients, and many patients were able to avoid surgery. And then also we had a stem cell therapy clinic, and some of those patients also had significant improvement beyond what they were getting treatment for. So it comes from not only the scientific study, but also the direct treatments that we've done for our patients. But one thing we found is that you're going to get out as much as you put into it. And then that is the main variable factor, what we have noticed among, all the patients that we've treated. The ones who said they've done, as much as they could, got the best results. And then their patients, I have a patient who actually had a 100% improvement from type 2 diabetes. And then, and most of them will never go back to the medicine. And this one patient had really bad type 2 diabetes. And she reversed it after about 3 or 4 months later. But then 2 years later, she came back and, to see me again. She gained a lot of weight, and then she got her, she's on insulin again. And because due to the family pressure, she went back the old way, and then her diabetes came back. And so it's not a fad diet. It has to become a lifestyle thing. So, yeah, I know. So I empathize. It can be very confusing because I myself, I've done paleo diet, probably about 8-9 years ago, because, to lose some weight, and I didn't know any better, and it didn't work. And most doctors, just like myself, only had 1 or 2 hours of nutrition training during medical school. So unless you have a self-interest, Most of them don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tracy. And Tracy, I don't know if you saw, but Maria challenged you to do the program, the protocol together in the chat. So we'll have to follow up on that.
Okay, I'll look.
We'll put a group of women with Hashimoto's and we'll do it together as a group. I bet it'll be cheaper.
Yeah.
So if we even feel 10% better, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Appreciate you, Tracy. Kimberly, you're up next. Kimberly, she might not have access to the microphone, so I'm going to ask the question for her, and if she pops on, that's fine. But Kimberly had asked in the chat, she says that she has hypoglycemia. How would she do fasting without crashing her sugar?
Yeah, so when you have a hypoglycemia, then you definitely want to, obviously you need to monitor your sugar level. And then also, it depends on what kind of fasting it is. And so you may not be able to do complete, either water fasting, or you may need to do more like a, juice fasting. This is the only time we actually, because we're against, we don't like juicing because you take away the fiber. But this would be the only time that we would have people, patients with hypoglycemia, if they're interested in doing fasting, that use juice fasting so that they can maintain the blood sugar level, and you have to carefully monitor it. And so unless you're talking about, intermittent fasting or the correct, right? And that's different from the, let's say, intermittent water fasting, which is for 4 or 5 days. But if you're doing time restricted eating, you just need to carefully monitor, and people tend to get used to it. And then, so if you become hypoglycemic, then obviously then you need to raise the blood sugar. So you may not be able to do pure time restricted eating, but you can make some modification for it. It's still better than just eating around the clock.
Got it. Actually, I had a question for you. When you were talking about allergies, you had mentioned that you believe allergies are an early sign of autoimmune disease. Does that correlate, the allergies correlate to a specific autoimmune disease? Or could that manifest itself in any specific type of way?
Yeah, I don't think it's a specific type. It's an association, and then allergy, I see it as an overreaction of your immune system, right? And so, many of us believe may not be an early sign. It doesn't mean you're going to develop, but there's a lot of similarities. And so there are a lot of people with autoimmune disease who also have suffered from seasonal allergies or asthma early on in their life. Yeah. And so that's why, if you, for majority of people, if they cut out the dairy, that's like one of the biggest culprits for even seasonal allergies, right? And then when they cut it out, that they are actually significantly better. And then there's also so many, what is a little upsetting is there's so many studies. There's so many studies that show strong association with in dairy and type 1 diabetes, but yet it's really not publicized. And unless you are in the field, then most people don't have that knowledge. And so I wish we can find ways to really let people know. But there's so many studies that there's such a strong link between the dairy and type 1 diabetes and juvenile diabetes. So I strongly recommend people avoiding it as much as possible. But dairy industry is way too powerful. It's a federal law that every kid at school that gets subsidized lunch has to have dairy milk on their tray, and it's actually a federal law. So that's how powerful dairy industries are.
Wow. Okay. Well, it looks like Michelle has now joined the squad with Tracy and Maria on going through the program. So that's great to see. I wanted to ask.
All right.
I wanted to ask before we finish up here, does anybody have any further questions? And just a reminder, you will get a recap email this week, hopefully on tomorrow, if not Wednesday for sure, with a recording of this presentation, and we'll keep the Q&A session in there for you as well.
Yeah, and then also please, everyone, share with your friends and family members. We want to make this, we offer free webinars, and before the coronavirus, we used to provide free, seminars at our clinics. Our main mission is to spread the knowledge and just giving you the tools so that, you can do it mostly yourself. So, and if you thought the information was helpful, please share with your friends and family members, and you may be helping, and you may be able to save other people's lives. So.
And Aika, I think you had a question. I hope I said your name correctly.
Yeah, it's Aisha.
Aisha. Okay, thank you.
I just had a question about colon health, what you would recommend for the colon.
Yeah, is anything specific about the colon health?
No, just in general to keep it healthy and.
Yeah. Well, colon health is essentially the gut health, and it's one of the most important things for really optimizing your health. So as I mentioned before, everything that we discussed, avoiding any inflammatory food, and then that's the first thing, is to stop injuring yourself, right? And so cutting out the processed food, as much as possible, animal-based products. And then start really adding on the food that is going to help you heal, and those are a lot of vegetables. I hope 75%, even once you're healed, 75% of it really needs to be raw. Dark green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables are very, very important. And even once you want to get to the next level, then you can start to sprout your own broccoli seeds, which I think is one of the most important superfood that only costs pennies. And you can buy, a whole bag of broccoli seeds, and then you can sprout them yourself and at pennies, and it has the most amount of something called glucoraphanin. It eventually becomes sulforaphane, which is very, very important. And great for preventing cancer, improves your brain function, even helps with the kids with autism, and helps patients with the early signs of Alzheimer's. Great for your gut health also. So cruciferous vegetables would be great, and then they also help do natural detoxification. And then also adding a lot more fiber. I didn't mention it today, but well, I did mention it of our ancestor. And my goal each day is try to eat, 100 grams of fiber per day. But that's very difficult to do because, I just can't eat enough. But definitely every single day, I try to do at least 60 to 70 grams of fiber per day. And so that is one of the main focus. Because if you do you will be able to achieve the healthiest gut, and then healthiest colon, like you talk about. And then the communities, they eat in about 100 grams of fiber per day. There are only very few of them, and certain villages in Africa, there's no heart disease, there's no cancer, there's no diabetes, there's no chronic disease. And they still live out in the wilderness, and then their death comes from different forms of infections or from injuries. So So those are the everything, you know, what we mentioned today is about maintaining a really, really healthy colon. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Aisha, thank you for your question. Anybody else before we take off for the evening? Okay. Oh, you know what? We did have one more in the chat, actually. I'm sorry. Asking, Kimberly asked, what your advice for foods that you do not like?
And I had a question too.
What do you do about the food that you don't like?
Yeah, in terms of advice for eating them, if it's something that you don't actually care to eat, but you know, you probably should be eating it.
I guess first see if there's an alternative. But you know, it's quite surprising how fast your palate actually also changes. I mean, depending on what is that you don't like, and you know, there may be something else that you could eat. Even, you know, there's lots of different kinds of plants that you could eat, and that's why I say eat at least 30 different kinds of plants each week. And so if you don't really like it, probably there's something else that you could eat. If there's a whole group, if you say, I don't want to eat plants, period, then and then we're going to have to talk about it even, you know, differently. But if it's a specific type of food, I'm sure there's something different that you could eat. And then Maria, you had another question?
Yeah, I forgot to mention, for years I've noticed, Dr. Wong, that I can't put weight on my bones. If I wear a purse, it hurts. I can't lift weights, and I wanted to know, what is it that's robbing my bones of? Is it calcium, or why am I losing strength in the musculoskeletal frame that I have? It's very weird. I just wonder about that. Why my bones feel so weak?
Yeah, I mean, it could be certainly a lot of different reasons, right? So if it's all over versus one particular joint, depending on what you do, you know, whether you had injuries or not. And so number one thing is, most people, when we see patients in the orthopedic clinic, they just have a lot of inflammation. I mean, that's why, you know, orthopedic doctors keeps on writing anti-inflammatories after anti-inflammatories, right? And so that's one thing. And then you may also become, you know, the things that shouldn't cause pain, you'll experience more pain. And then also, as we age, especially, and you've heard me talk before, after age 40, especially, we need to really replenish our own stem cells. And so, you know, the study even have shown that by eating certain type of food, especially the food that has a lot of nitrate that helps you produce nitric oxide, will help increase the production of your own stem cell that can help regenerate. And if you don't, if you can't do that, then you will lose the ability to repair the naturally damaged tissues. Then you're going to experience more pain. And so, you know, a lot of people think, well, you know, my joint hurts, is that because of my calcium? That's typically not the case. And people start taking, you know, calcium supplements, which doesn't do really anything for their bone density. And so, and that's all the marketing. You know, vitamin D is actually a lot more important than calcium for maintaining, you know, more calcium in your bone. So those are all could be, you know, a lot of different reasons, and especially for you, because you have a form of autoimmune disease, and your immune system is overreactive as well, and that could certainly be, you know, other reasons also. So, but we can definitely talk, you know, a lot more about you know, specific things regarding that.
One last point. One last point. I have a 69-year-old Latina who has severe osteoarthritis. She has to go see the orthosurgeon, is what the primary care wants her to do. Can a program like this help her to maybe slow down and avoid a hip surgery? I'm just throwing that out there. What do you think?
Yeah, we have actually helped, even in our own clinic, help patients avoid surgery or delay surgery, especially with a joint replacement. Like every 10 years, they have to have a revision because those plastic parts don't last very long. And then each time surgery gets bigger and bigger. So joint replacement, you want to delay it as much as possible. But at some point, it may be inevitable. But, technology in 10 years is going to be very, very different than it is today also, right? And so, but what we found was, like in losing a pound of weight, you reduce the stress to your joint by 7 pounds, right? So you're putting extra, each pound that you carry, it adds 7 to 10 times additional weight to your joint, whether it's your knee or your hip. And so when they suffer from, let's say, osteoarthritis and have knee arthritis or hip arthritis, number one, with the healthy diet, and if they lose weight, it may reduce the amount of pain they experience. And then also with the anti-inflammatory diet and stop injuring themselves, that would also decrease the pain. And that's a natural anti-inflammatory. I even had a patient who had a very large thoracic herniation. And in order to address it, we actually have to crack her chest open and decompress the lung in order to get to the spine. And so it's a pretty morbid surgery. So why don't you give yourself a chance and then, follow our protocol, come back in 4 months. If you still have pain, then we'll go ahead and crack your chest open and then, decompress your lung and get to your spine and take out the disc. She came back and actually 3 months later, and she said she no longer has pain and she still had the herniated disc, but it was no longer painful because her inflammation was so down. And then at the same time, she lost significant amount of weight, as well as actually her husband also, because he just basically, she was the one who was cooking and he ate whatever she cooked, and he actually came and showed us the belt and then all the holes, extra holes that he had to put in his belt, and so it is possible. And if somebody has a severe osteoarthritis, bone on bone, it may become inevitable at some point, need a joint replacement. However, for some patients, they may actually be able to delay it. Meanwhile, they may be able to, reverse if they have a pre-diabetes, then you reverse it. They definitely have cardiovascular disease. Everyone does. Everyone in this call has cardiovascular disease to different degrees. May be able to reverse that. And then everyone on this call has cancer cells flowing in their body. Will be able to reduce the number of cancer cells that flowing through their body. So that would be the potential, side effect, a benefit that she may gain. So I think it would be beneficial for her.
Thank you.
And also, if she does need surgery, her body will be much better prepared to undergo surgical treatment if they do. So they'll recover a lot faster and a lot better also.
I'll bring her to see you. Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Wong, we had a couple.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure, and then thank you for such a wonderful questions and interactions, and so really appreciate it. Pete?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks to everyone. We did have, looks like 2 more questions in the chat if we want to get to those real quick. I know we've had a couple people leave, but
We lost you, T.
I'm sorry. Laura, it looks like she had asked if you knew anything about the mediator release test and the LEAP immunocom diet program.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with those.
Okay, and I'm not sure if, Laura, I don't know if you have a microphone to chime in.
Yeah. I'll look them up to see what I think they are. So.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. No, I was asking. I did a blood test. It was called what I was talking about, the mediator release test, that I guess tests your bloods in inflammatory response to certain foods and chemicals. And it's supposed to tell you, you know, which foods you are supposed to eat, which ones you're reactive to or not reactive to. I know some of the other people are talking about how, you know, everybody has different advice. This was a nutritionist that works with a doctor that does it, but it is really confusing because you can't figure out what you are supposed to eat or not supposed to eat. I don't know. My thing said that I was highly reactive to rice and corn.
Yeah, there's those type of studies, and there are also genetic tests that are extremely expensive that tells you what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat.
Yeah.
And we actually had a big discussion among different scientific advisory boards, and it said, how many people did they test? How many genetic testing did they do? And how did they come up with such a, you know, certain genes that people should eat certain type of food and avoid certain type of food, right? Is it based on 100 people, 50 people, 1,000 people? And there's really no strong evidence. And so the consensus among the top scientists is that, you know, don't waste your money, right? And the people, let's say, like in blue zones, the you know, the cities across the world that has the most number of centenarians, people who live above 100, and they, you know, tend not to have all the chronic disease that we have, but they don't have gyms. They just, you know, live the good old simple ways, right? Like, you know, my mother-in-law told me, like, way you eat like you're a really poor person, like back when I was really young, right? and so I think that we need to just go back and eat like the way our ancestors used to eat. I think that you just need to make it very simple. But I've gone, you know, like there's different organizations that try to recruit me to do genetic testing for our patients to help them, you know, see what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat. And their sample population they're all pretty small, and they couldn't have tested every single food on the planet. And so, you know, I don't know whether they work or not, but at least they don't have enough scientific studies to you know, show me the proof. So I
Okay.
like I said, I empathize. It is very confusing, and you know, just because you know, like we recommend whole food plant-based doesn't mean it works for 100% of the patient, right? And so, but you know, it tends to work for a majority of the patients, and then not just myself, but also with other lifestyle medicine physicians and other healthcare providers. But at this stage, I wouldn't, you know, really rely on those type of studies. I don't think they're backed by enough scientific studies.
Yeah, no, like I said, it was, I mean, I only thought it was interesting because supposedly they tested my specific blood, you know, my specific blood and what the reaction to, like inflammatory reactions to different foods and chemicals. So supposedly it was just me, but I mean, you're right. I don't know what kind of scientific evidence or how they measured that inflammation.
Yeah, there are all kinds. There's like, they also have like blood type diet, right? So if you have
Right.
blood type B, you should be eating certain food, blood type O, and that is, you know, we know that is a total bogus.
Right.
And some people do spend a lot of money on that study, and that is literally a complete, you know, I could use a lot of colorful word for that test. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. This was very informative. I missed a little of the beginning, so I'll look out for the recording that you send out.
Okay,
So
great.
thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for
I
joining us.
appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and your questions, Laura. And then Patty, do you want to chime in with your question?
Dr. Juan,
Hello, Patty.
how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, listen, so what can Brianna do for this GBS? The Guillain-Barré
yeah,
syndrome.
I think, yeah, like, you know, I could definitely, you know, contact you, you know, about her, but
Okay.
also, you know, she really do need to, you know, change your diet, and I'm happy to help. I know that there's a lot more involved, and
Yeah.
so so we can definitely talk offline. About
Okay,
her.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Juan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we got to all the questions, and I just wanted to highlight the last thing before we go. John had just mentioned, which I think was a great tip on if you don't know how much fiber that you're consuming and you want to track it, there's plenty of online food journals and trackers where you can input what you're consuming, and it'll help, you know, give you a gauge and measurement. John was saying that he uses MyFitnessPal, but there's plenty of others that should do the same thing. So it's a great tip for everyone.
Yeah, great point, John. Thank you for mentioning that. There are also like the chronometer also that does very similar thing. So depending on what you like. So there's several different apps out in the market. So.
Okay. Well, very good. That's everything. I just want to say thank you once again, and we hope to see everybody next time. Just a reminder, the next Zoom call that we do is going to be, as I mentioned at the beginning, a cook-along class. So it'll be a plant-based cook-along, and for the people that hung around to the very end, I'll tell you before we tell everybody else this week that it's going to be a plant-based Latin-inspired rice bowl. And so we have an awesome plant-based chef who will be, you know, providing the lesson. It's free to attend, just like this, and we'll make sure to send out about a week in advance the ingredients list. So you'll have plenty of time to go to the store, get what you need, and then join us for that. So we can make some food together, learn about why it's really healthy and good for us, and then eat it together if you choose to hang out and eat your food in front of the cameras.
It's going to be a lot more popular than the lectures.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and by the way, our plant-based chef, Jason, he's amazing. He's helped us with most of our cooking videos. And so we're just trying to create a lot of content for everyone. And because I know, you know, a lot of people think that eating plant-based is just salad, but it can be so much more. And his food has just been amazing. It's so delicious. And so, so then now, you know, be able to cook along with him. So. And then, yeah, and you can check out our website for his recipes and his videos. So.
Appreciate you guys. Everyone have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.